Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining in today here at the pastor's desk. We are continuing our study of Ecclesiastes. Today we're going to be talking about chapter 4. And Solomon hits a lot of different topics here. It's a shorter chapter, but it hits on a number of different things. And so as we go through, we'll hit on each one of those and talk it through. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Again, I saw all the oppressions that are done under the sun. And behold, the tears of the oppressed, and they had no one to comfort them. On the side of their oppressors there was power, and there was no one to comfort them. And I thought the dead who are already dead more fortunate than the living who are still alive. But better than both is he who has not yet been, and has not seen the evil deeds that are done under the sun. So Solomon here, again, kind of looking at this idea of injustice, that the poor and the oppressed, there's no one to comfort them in this life. The powerful and the rich, they are, kind of ruling over these people. And so he sees this injustice, that there's no one to comfort these poor and lowly. And so Solomon says that those who have lived and those that and then died, who are dead now, they're better off because they're not facing this injustice now, which we agree as Christians, because those who are dead are in paradise. They're in heaven, so they have the greatest good. But Solomon here is looking purely at they are not going through that injustice anymore. And so they're better off. But then off than even those are those who have not yet even been born. Solomon says that they have not seen any of the evil of this world. And so, because he's seen so much evil, looking through all of these things, looking for sources of substance, something to grab hold of. But everything turns out to be vanity and evil. And so Solomon says that it's better just not to experience any of this, which shows how evil this world can be. Then I saw that all toil and all skill and work come from a man's envy of his neighbor. This also is vanity and a striving after the wind. That verse in and of itself is a whole different topic. Again, he's talking about toil and working and how, again, it's vanity. But here he gets a little further into the issue in saying that all toil, all work is a result of man's envy of another. You think of why people work, why people go through these career paths. On the face of it, people will say, oh, I want to better society, or I want to have money so that I can give to people. But deep down in our own sinful nature, honestly, the reason that we want money is because we want to better our own lives. We see other people with riches, and we want to be like them. We see the millionaires out there and think, wow, I deserve that. I should have that much money. And so I'm going to do what I can to get that kind of wealth so that I can be happy because I should be happy. And it shows our lack of contentness. We covet our neighbor's things, and so then we work to try and get them for ourselves. And by doing that, we tell God, I know you've given me these things in life, but I'm not content with that. I don't think that's enough. I think you were wrong. And so we break the commandments very quickly. But Solomon sees and realizes our sinful nature, man's sinful nature, and says, this is the root of it. And this is why it's vanity, because God's not at the center, even though sometimes we claim that he is. Verse 5. The fool folds his hands and eats his own flesh. Better is a handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil and a striving after the wind. Now, this is kind of an off-putting sentence. The fool holds his hands and eats his own flesh. Now, this is not talking about cannibalism. Luther actually talks about how this is a Hebrew phrase, a Hebrew idiom, meaning that someone is causing harm to themselves, that they're hurting themselves, and so they use that phrase of eating their own flesh. No one else is causing that harm; it's them. And so he says that the fool, folds his hands and eats his own flesh. And by folding his hands, he is not doing work. When you work, you have to use your hands, pick things up, hammer things, whatever the case may be. But the fool, folding his hands, is just sitting back and not doing any work. And so by not doing any work, he is eating his own flesh. He's causing harm to himself. He is withering and decaying away. And so Solomon here says that it's evil to do that, to not do any work. But at the same time, he says that toil is vanity. And so it says, better is a handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil and a striving after wind. So it's bad to not do anything. It's vanity to have hands full of work and always working. It all ends in nothingness. And so Solomon says, have in your hands peace, quietness. And this quietness is not just, literal quietness, sitting there in peace and quiet, but a peace, really, a peace that God is the one in control, that we are not working for our salvation. We are not doing that. God does it. God does the work for us. He sent Jesus to die on the cross to do that work for us. Again, I saw vanity under the sun. One person who has no other, either son or brother, yet there is no end to all his toil, and his eyes are never satisfied with riches, so that he never asks, for whom am I toiling and depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and an unhappy business. So here Solomon is talking about how people who have no one else, have no family, no friends, no one to work for, but they're still working and working. They then ask the question, why am I doing all this work? Who am I working for? Who benefits from this? I'm depriving myself of pleasure. For who? And it's not for anyone else. And so that's vanity. If you're not serving someone else, what's the point? Now in our society, it's very much, well, serve yourself. But Solomon has addressed that too. You spend your whole life working to build up this wealth for yourself, but then when you die, after years and years of working, you hand your inheritance off to someone else, and they don't have the same values as you do. They don't value the work that you've done, and then you die, and you are no better off than the beasts from last chapter. So this toil is vanity, especially if you don't have anyone to work for. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. So here Solomon is really getting at the point of that it's beneficial to have others with you, to have company. And this is not a new piece of wisdom that Solomon is bringing. I mean, this goes back to Genesis, where God sees Adam and says, it is not good that man is alone. And so he creates Eve to be with him. This is the same concept, that it's good to be with other people. It's not good to be isolated. And that's part of why this current time with this pandemic is so difficult for people, because you are being forced to be isolated. You're being forced to not gather with people This is why it's so hard for so many churches, because pastors are left with this decision of, do we, for the good of the neighbor, cancel services, just go to online streamings and things? That's one option, but then pastors are torn because the gathering together is so beneficial for the flock of God. Not only just being together and seeing one another, seeing the body of Christ, but receiving word and sacrament together. And so it's difficult, and pastors are going both ways on this, and a continued prayer for wisdom for your pastors across the world. It's greatly appreciated. It's a tough time for us. Solomon says that two are better than one, because they can help each other in their toil. They can help pick you up. They can help keep you warm. If you have to fight someone, it's better to have two people with you than just you one-on-one with someone else, because two weaker people can still take down one strong person. And so, there's power in numbers. And then that line there at the end, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. This imagery of the threefold cord is often used in marriages to describe the three cords being the man, the wife, and God. And that the three together, if you've got all three, it is not easily broken. Now, while they're not equal cords in that case, the cord of God holds it all together. But that imagery of if you keep all three, your marriage is better off. It's more likely to last than if you leave God out of it. And then it's just two, and that's more easily broken. So just that concept there of there's power in numbers, and that it's good for humanity to be together. Verse 13, better was a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king, who no longer knew how to take advice. For he went from prison to the throne, though in his own kingdom he had been poor. I saw all the living who move about under the sun, along with that youth who was to stand in the king's place. There was no end of all the people, all of whom he led. Yet those who come later will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and a striving after wind. And so here Solomon's saying, it's better to be poor and wise than it is to be a rich king who's a fool. That wisdom is beneficial. He talked about this last chapter with wisdom. It's better to be wise than foolish, but in the end, it's still all vanity. And the language he uses here very much draws upon the Joseph narrative. That Joseph, he's poor in his own country. His brothers hated him, and he's sold into slavery. He was literally in prison and went from prison to the throne. Told Pharaoh's dream, its meaning, and Pharaoh put him second in command over all of Egypt. And so he went from prison to the throne, and multitudes followed him. He was in command of so many people. And yet there at the end, note again what Solomon says, yet those who come later will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and a striving after wind. The Pharaoh who came later did not remember Joseph, and then began to enslave the Israelites. And so even these great things that Joseph did ended up being meaningless for the next generation, for generations to come. And so that is what we have to remember, that even great things that we think are great is vanity, and that it's all vanity without God. And next time, we'll look at chapter 5. You say hello? Hello. Thought you guys would enjoy seeing Luke. Enjoy seeing you. All right. We'll see you next time. Can you say bye-bye? Bye-bye.